Good day, learners, and welcome to Module 1.3, Grade 10 syllabus, and we're looking now at hardware. So let's have a look at what we're going to be exploring in this module. We're going to be looking at input devices, output devices, storage, and then our health and environmental issues. Okay, so remember, this is hardware. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the physical components that we can touch and see. Right? That's the core of what we are doing. In the first module, we dealt with the information processing cycle. Now, I did say to you and I explained to you what the input does. This is where the computer receives instructions. Processing is where it works on the data. Output is where the computer gives us feedback or the results of the processing. Storage is where we are saving this, and communication is where, if we want to share it out on the internet or email it to someone, things like that. So that is our information processing cycle. But now we're looking at it in terms of the hardware that is required to perform these particular functions. For example, with input, the computer receives instructions. Now, how does your phone, tablet, laptop, desktop, how does it receive instructions? By our keyboard or mouse, right? When we type something in, it's giving an instruction. When we press on the touch screen, it's giving an instruction. Sometimes we can use Siri, for example. We're giving verbal commands. Those are instructions that we are giving. So that's all part of input. Then we've got processing. Like I said to you, this is where the computer works on the data. So if we are trying to sort our data, format our data, turn it into something else, all of that is our processing. Now, what hardware does the work over here? Well, the part of the computer that does all of this processing is our CPU. You need to know that. It is our central processing unit. The results of processing is the output. So as I'm doing this, where is this displayed? On a screen. Maybe I'm doing some video editing. I need to see it out on the monitor. Maybe I'm doing some audio recording and editing there as well. I need to listen to that through my speakers or headphones. Maybe I want to print it out and see what it looks like. So the results of processing is our output. And that we see on a screen, maybe it's sound, printing, whatever the case is. Now we want to save it, and that is storage. So please remember, when it comes to computers and we talk about permanent storage, we're talking about the fact that when I switch my computer off, my files and folders don't disappear. Right? It's not temporary, it is permanent. And then the last one, and obviously for that, we're talking about things like flash drives, hard drives, etc. Then the last one in this is our communications. So this is where we are maybe linked to the internet. We want to email it to someone. We want to send it to someone. And we are going to use things like, routers, etc. in order to do that. Okay, so let's dive a bit deeper. When we talk about input, we're talking about data and instructions that's being given. That could be a program, which is, as we know, a set of instructions that's loaded into memory when you run the program, right? So when I open up a program, like Word, for example, there are instructions that are loaded into the memory. Instructions can be commands as well, whether I click on something. And it can be a user response. Okay, so these are all ways in which instructions can be given. Let's look at some of the hardware. Since this module is talking about hardware, one of the first things when it comes to input is our keyboard. And the keyboard is, remember this, the most commonly used input device. These shortcuts are important. Please try them out, memorize them. They are things you use for the rest of your life when it comes to computers. Now, we have useful shortcuts. So things like print screen, because what that does on your keyboard is it actually takes a photo of everything that's displayed on your screen, and then you can actually paste that to wherever you need to. You'll come across things like your clipboard as well. Your clipboard is simply an area in memory where text and other objects have been copied and are temporarily stored. So when I press print screen, it goes to my clipboard. Then when I paste, it's taken from the clipboard and put wherever I'm going to paste that. With our input devices, another one is our mouse, and most of us should be familiar with this, what the mouse does. We've touched on it before. Click, double click, right click, all these different things that the mouse can do. So that's another input device. Then we've also got connecting devices. So this is the back of our motherboard. This is usually what we see at the back of a computer or a desktop computer. These ports over here is where we get our sound from. Here we've got USB ports. We've got a network port for our, connecting our router or connecting to the internet. This is a very old keyboard and mouse port, and this is usually for our monitor. Now we have ports, and these are sockets. All of these ports here are sockets used to connect what we call peripherals to the computer. So anything outside of the computer box that connects to any of these is known as a peripheral. Your keyboard, peripheral. Mouse, peripheral. Monitor, peripheral. Printer, peripheral. Anything outside of this box is going to be a peripheral. We already are quite familiar with the term plug and play, as we were in the previous module. We were talking about the feature of the operating system that automatically detects and configures a device plugged into it so that we can use the device almost immediately. We also have scanning devices. Now, remember, we are still looking at input, right? So remember now, when I scan, what am I doing? I'm putting my page down here and I'm scanning that hard copy or that content that's on a piece of paper or book or whatever it is, and it's scanning it and turning it into a digital version, but it's scanning it into the PC. Here's a barcode scanner. You've seen this at the shops. When they scan a barcode, what happens? It's taking that information or that code and sending it through into the PC, and it displays the results. Okay, so these are scanners. Scanners are also used at cashiers in shops to optically read the barcode of a purchased item. The item code and therefore the price are read into the till, and the final total can be calculated. Okay, so that's our scanning devices. We also have QR codes and barcodes, and again, most of you are familiar with this. Please just remember that our QR code is a quick response code. They have become increasingly popular as they are easily read by the camera of a smartphone. Okay, bear this in mind. They differ from barcodes as they are two-dimensional sets of different size squares on a white background. Here we see them. Whereas a barcode is a simple pattern of thin and wide lines that are decoded by the scanner to represent data. So please just know the difference between your QR code and your barcode. The nice thing, your QR code can be programmed with really anything. You also have your magnetic stripe readers. Now, a little bit of an older technology, especially where the bank cards are concerned. They used to do this. In fact, some of the machines still do this when they want you to swipe your card. I mean, most of what we do is tap anyway. But the information is encoded on the magnetic stripe of the card or even an employee's identification card. Credit cards and ATM cards are examples of the types of cards that can be read by a magnetic stripe reader. Okay, so that's all input. Let's look now at output. When we talk about output, this is what the computer produces, what did we say, as a result of processing. We have things like our monitors, our screens, our speakers, our printers. So let's look at our monitor. With our monitors, we have two main things, and that's size and resolution. So we need to remember the following. A monitor size, and this is a monitor for your PC. This is in relation to a laptop, your TV, any of these. If they tell you it's a 32-inch TV, a 65-inch TV, that size is measured from corner to corner diagonally in inches, not horizontally here, right? Not that way. It's diagonally in inches. When we talk about the resolution of a screen, of a TV, we're talking about the number of pixels. These are the small dots that are used to make up the image on the screen. The higher that number, the better the quality of the image. So the resolution is really talking about the image quality that you are going to be getting at the end of the day. We also have graphics cards, and this is where the image is generated by specialized circuitry. So it's a special card that plugs into the PC that gives us separate high-end graphics for things like games, video editing, etc. We also have another two. The first being our response time. Now you need to know this because this is something that does come up regularly. What is meant by the response time? And you'll see this on TVs as well. This refers to the time it takes to change a pixel from one color to another. So the quicker it can do that, the better the image is going to be, because now you're not going to have sort of a lag between it going from black to white and then it distorts the image a little bit. No, you will be fine. So you want to make sure that this is a good response time. It also plays a role when it comes to gaming, right? You want a monitor that has a very low response time, right? Like 0.1 milliseconds or things like that, which means it can quickly change from one color to the next. The way we connect our monitors and TVs and things like that. Some connect via VGA, some connect via HDMI, some a DisplayPort, some a Thunderport. For specialized monitors, some of them even connect via USB, right? So there are different ways. The two biggest ones that we focus on is really VGA and HDMI. VGA, our video graphics adapter, meaning only video is transferred from your PC to the monitor. HDMI is your high definition multimedia interface, which means now that we can transfer video and audio through one cable. Okay, so when I plug HDMI into my desktop and I plug it into the monitor, it's going to transfer audio and video. Right. Okay, so that's fine. There we go. Then we have some of our older monitors. Now, this is what the older monitors look like. I'm sure you've seen some of these. I'm sure you've seen some TVs that look like this as well. Big, bulky cathode ray tube monitors. They've been replaced by what we have these days, especially with our TVs, with our liquid crystal display, our LCD, some are LED monitors. And with the LCD, they use the properties of liquid crystals working with electricity to line the crystals up in the pattern of the image that is required. Why would I go, and this is a typical question that comes up, why would I bother to go with an LCD monitor if it's so expensive as opposed to a cathode ray tube? Well, number one, look at the size. Number two, the one's going to be heavier than the other one. Number three, the LCD monitor uses less electricity than the CRT monitor. It gives you a better image than the CRT monitor. And I don't think I need to go further. Okay. Obviously, your LED works slightly differently, but it's also using less electricity. It weighs less, etc. Then we have our printers. And really, guys, we have two types of printers that we focus on. It's the inkjet and the laser printer. So you need to know the difference between these two. And I'm just going to do the inkjet here quickly. We can see this is an inkjet printer. It is smaller than our laser. It works with 4 individual cartridges. So you can see here, this is for our yellow. It's usually yellow, cyan, and magenta, and then black. So these 3 colors will combine to make up whatever color we need to print, and obviously black will print black. What does it do? Well, these cartridges spray microscopic dots of ink onto the paper. These printers are cheap to buy. They are expensive to run because you have to replace these cartridges regularly. You're not going to get a huge amount of prints out of these anyway. So deciding between which one to buy is going to depend on what you are going to be doing with it. However, you will get good quality color prints, and it is slightly slower than your laser. Now, your laser printers work like your photocopiers. They are, as opposed to the inkjet, they are more expensive to buy, but you will get more prints out of it. It is cheaper to run. It's best if you're going to be printing a lot of pages, and it is a lot faster than inkjet, but they mostly come in black and white. right? You will pay a lot more if you want a color laser printer, but you do get those printers. So we said with the inkjet, we spraying microscopic dots of ink onto the page. So how does the laser work? Because if you've ever printed with a laser printer, you'll notice that the pages come out warm. But why is that? Well, let's look a little bit closer. So your laser printer works in a similar way to a photocopy machine. And here's your machine. This is where your paper is sitting at the moment. And you can see that the paper goes around here, through this area, up over there, and then it exits on top. So what do they say to us? They say, well, inside the printer is a large magnetic drum that's over here, which rotates. This magnetic drum is connected to the computer and receives the data of what image needs to be reproduced. So I say I'd like to print a particular picture. That information goes to my drum. The ink is then magnetically attached to the drum. Now, in this case, with a laser printer, they don't use the ink cartridges. We use what is called toner, right? So the toner is then attached to the drum to produce the particular image on the surface. The drum then rotates further and picks up a sheet of blank paper, which covers the whole surface of the drum. A laser beam light, here we can see our laser unit, a laser beam or a laser light beam now heats the paper and melts or burns the ink onto the paper. The completed copy is then rotated out of the printer up here on top, and the next copy can begin again. This explains why a page printed by a laser printer always comes out hot after printing. It's actually the fact that the image or text or whatever it is burned onto the page. Right, we continue with our printers. How do printers then connect? Well, they can connect through a variety of ways, depending on what type of printer it is. But the most common is our USB port. So we have a cable that plugs into the printer and then usually plugs into our PC via a USB port. Here we can see what is known as the default printer. Now, when you look at this, here I've got my fax, I've got my LaserJet, I've got my print to PDF, but this one's got a green circle with a tick in it. This indicates that out of everything that I've got on my PC, this is the default printer. What that means is, this is the printer that is going to get the instruction to print the particular image or document. So if I click print, that instruction will automatically go to this printer, and then it needs to carry out that instruction. Then I also have data projectors, right? Remember, we're talking about output devices. It takes what's in the PC and it is displaying it out, right? Our data projector, they connect through one of these two cables. And remember what the difference is. My VGA is going to display or transfer a signal that is only video to the data projector, whereas HDMI is going to take video and audio. I've also got speakers and headphones, and most of us know what these are. We know how these work. So it's just giving us whatever's in the PC that we are listening to. It's bringing that sound out of the PC. Then we have storage. Now, storage has a much larger capacity than memory because it has to keep all of the data and programs, even the ones you are not using right now. And here we have a very old example, right? We're dealing with a CD, and over here I have what's known as a DVD-ROM. Here's a CD-ROM as well. But what it's basically showing you is this is the device that I'm going to use to put information onto this disk. This is the storage medium. This is the disk where the information is going to be stored on. Okay, so please, those two terms you need to know. The storage device, that's why they've got the drive over there, and the medium, in other words, what's going to be used to store the actual files. Now, we don't deal with this too often, but it's something that you need to know. And I'm going to take it from the bottom. For example, when we say we've got a 1 terabyte, whether it's flash drive or hard drive, that means that there are 1024 gigs worth of space that makes up 1 terabyte. 1 gig is made up of 1024 megabytes. 1 megabyte is made up of 1024 kilobytes, and 1 kilobyte is equal to 1024 bytes. So they might ask you, what is the smallest storage unit that you get when it comes to the PC, and that's your bytes. And at the moment, most of our hard drives that we're dealing with are somewhere between gigs and terabytes. Now, we do have different storage mediums. For example, our hard drives. This is a traditional hard drive, right? You can see it's got its physical number one. It's got disks. These are actuator arms that actually write the information onto the disk. And this is where all our programs and data are stored. And it's usually, like I said, measured in either gigabytes or terabytes. We also have external hard drives or portable hard drives that connect via USB. In other words, they get the power to operate from the PC itself. Okay. Now, I just want you to have a look at this when it comes to our hard drives. This is exactly what I mentioned. Now, here you can see this is the platter, which is this that we were talking about over here. Here's your actuator arm. There you can see the actuator arm and the head that's writing the information. That is the head that's writing the information onto these platters. Okay. Now, remember, our hard drive stores all our programs and data. The external hard drives like this, it works differently, but this is how our traditional hard drive works. We also have flash drives. Now, these use electronic memory to store data, and it's powered via USB. You can also see when I plug that in, it will usually come up as a removable disk. And these devices allow us to simply plug it into a USB port. It gets listed as a removable disk or whichever name you've given to it, and we can then use that as storage from there as well. Not the best because we can often lose these things, but yeah. Right, then we get memory cards and card readers. Now, you would have seen this, some of you with your cell phones adding extra space to your, or storage space to your cell phones. Some of you have digital cameras. You would have seen this as well. Drones, anything like that. A lot of them use these memory cards. So it is an example of electronic flash memory data storage. And it's obviously used for storing digital information. And I've mentioned a few. You really just need to know an example of one or two of them in terms of where it would be used and what it's used for, right? So it's just extra storage in a different device. In order to read this, you need one of these devices. Now, I know a lot of laptops have these devices built into them, right? Now, if that is the case, they'll usually list it on the specifications of the laptop. If you don't have it, these are things you can buy as well. This is our memory card reader. Now, why does it have a number of different ports in it? Because our memory cards over here come in different shapes and sizes, right? Like we have these very small SD cards and then the slightly bigger ones. Some of them are quite big and then the smaller ones fit into them. So this device over here is a device for reading data on a memory card such as your compact flash, SD, multimedia card, etc. Then we have our motherboard. Now, this is something that I wanted to include so that we can become very familiar with this board. Now, our motherboard is the main circuitry board in the computer. This is the board, and probably why they call it a motherboard. It's the board to which everything else is connected, right? We connect our peripherals over here to the motherboard. We put in memory, we put in a CPU, maybe an extra graphics card, our power supply, but everything works through the motherboard. It is the main circuitry board, the largest circuitry board of our computer. Then, here's an example of something that gets plugged into that circuitry board, which is RAM or memory. That stands for random access memory. That's what RAM stands for. Most motherboards have 2 or 3 RAM slots, and if we look back at this one, we can see this one has 4 of those slots. This one just has 2. Each slot allows you to connect another board directly to the motherboard. So this, you can see when it's plugged in, that is connected directly to the motherboard. Data is written to RAM, and this is a temporary storage area. That's why we talk about it being volatile. What does that mean when we talk about temporarily? That means that when I switch the PC off, whatever's been stored in here gets wiped clean. So data is written to RAM and is done so temporarily for the CPU to use while it's processing data or controlling hardware or software. So when I open up a program, it's going to be written into the memory, and then the program is going to go and open, right? The CPU is processing maybe something else, so that is why the RAM then ends up doing that. Now, on the other end, we have something called ROM, read-only memory. This is a chip soldered directly onto the motherboard, and these chips store information that is needed by the computer on a permanent basis, such as the devices loaded on the computer. Now, what did we say we mean by permanency? It means that when the computer is switched off, those instructions or whatever is loaded into ROM doesn't disappear. And think about this. These chips store information that's needed by the computer on a permanent basis, such as the devices loaded on the computer. That cannot change, right? So this is why it is read-only memory. It is non-volatile memory, which means it does not change. Right, then we have our CPU or Central Processing Unit. This is the brain of the computer. It's responsible for converting data to information. It does the processing as we spoke about before. It controls all of the hardware devices, software programs, and all of the operations of the computer. So if anything goes wrong with your CPU, it affects everything in the PC. The speed of the CPU is also very important, because the faster the chip is, the faster your computer will be able to function. What you need to remember or know as well is that we measure the speed of the CPU in hertz. Today's computers typically run at speeds of greater than 3 gigahertz. Okay, so what's the PC speed or the CPU speed measured in? They'll often give you the specs of the PC and ask you things like that. It's measured in hertz, but most PCs are running in gigahertz these days. We also have our basic input and output system. This is also another special chip. This one, very importantly, stores information that's needed when the computer is switched on and controls how the computer switches on and what tasks are performed, and it helps the CPU control the other devices connected to the computer. So the BIOS is where we can say, well, it must the PC must look to this particular hard drive, maybe the second hard drive and not the first hard drive. When it comes to the operating system, it will indicate what happens when the PC is switched on. So very important chip there as well. And then the last of our hardware devices is our power supply unit. Now, when you see this, we are talking about a desktop computer. A laptop, remember, works with a battery, but our power supply unit is specifically for our desktop machines. This device gives power. You see all these connectors? It gives power from the wall, comes in here, converts it to what the PC needs, and it pushes that power through these various connectors to give power to the various items in the PC. And if I go back over here, I want to show you, there's your power supply. So that power supply connector will plug in here and gives power to everything in the motherboard. There it is again, plug in, it gives power to everything on this motherboard. Okay, so this unit connects to the motherboard. As we have seen now, it allows the power supply unit to convert the electricity from the wall to the voltage needed by the motherboard. It also supplies electricity to the other devices not directly powered from the motherboard. So the mere fact that I can plug into USB, taking a flash drive, plugging it into USB port and it's getting power, The power supply unit is the one that's pushing all of that. Then lastly for this module, we look at health and environmental issues. So you are using a PC, we've got input devices, output devices, all of these things, but you can pick up issues. For example, something like RSI, which is your repetitive strain injury. This simply means that you are getting an injury from doing the same thing over and over and over. Here you see, for example, what they call an ergonomically designed keyboard. It's got this weird shape because it's intended to be a much more comfortable position for your arms and hands to be in when you are typing. Okay? Please, you need to know this term, ergonomics. It is the study and design of the workplace and the equipment used in the workplace for the comfort and safety of people in their work environments. So that is a term that you must know. So how can we give people some health tips for using computers? Well, you want to use ergonomically designed equipment. You want to sit correctly. You want to adjust the height of the seat and table. The lighting must be adequate. You need to have ventilation, right? Your mouse and keyboard must be in easy reach. Your monitor must be at the correct level and distance from your eyes. You want to turn your eyes away from the monitor every now and then. And probably most importantly, you do want to take regular breaks. These are some health tips. These are things that are asked all the way through to grade 12. You need to know at least 3 or 4 of them. And they usually present this in a scenario where you need to give someone advice as to what they can do to use the computer in a healthy way. And then we have green computing. Now, you can imagine anything with green, we're normally talking about the environment, right? So green computing is where we are taking the environment into consideration. We are wanting to use our computers in an environmentally friendly way. So you want to switch off computers and devices that you are not using. Why? So that we can use less electricity. Well, usually Eskom comes in and switches it off for us. But anyway, that's what we want to be doing. You want to avoid wasting paper. So check your stuff digitally before you print. Maybe print on both sides of the paper. Try to repair or upgrade old and broken hardware. You might want to recycle or return used ink and toner cartridges. And then you might want to even consider refilling or reusing those cartridges. And folks, that brings us to the end of our module where we've now looked at the hardware devices. We've looked at our health and environmental issues also when it comes to our computers.